Let's get going today. I got a feeling like a chair was going to fall over. I want to start really with reviewing the test from last time to go over those things that as a class we got wrong. And that's really because of this, right? We had 2 students that had 90s, but that was it. And if I looked back at last year, this is traditionally one of the highest tests. So I kind of feel like we need to go over it and those things that we got wrong. And you know what, I'm going to go to the other screen real fast to make sure I don't show people's grades when I go to the analysis page. Now, I did get feedback that, well, you were gone a lot of it, Mr. Poole, but if I showed you last year, I was gone much more last year. So every time I'm gone this year, realize I was gone 24 more days last year because I was still in the reserves. And I'm not anymore. So those are 24 days that I'm not gone this year, which is why a lot of my lessons are blended in the first place so that you still get the same instruction as if I was here. But you guys have to make sure that when you're watching those videos that you actually are paying attention as if I was here. Okay, where are my results? There we go. Results. That's not the one I wanted. Statistics. Where's that one? Yeah, that is one. Okay, so I'll unfreeze. So we're going to go over the ones that people got wrong and talk about those things before we get too far into Chapter 7. Where'd Chapter 6 go, Mr. Poole? Okay, Chapter 6 was on floppy drives. And obviously we're not going to waste any time at all on floppy drives. Yes. I should renumber my chapters because after Chapter 7 we go 8 and then 15 and then 16. I need to renumber those for the ones that I deleted.
Up to 9 through 14.
Yeah, so yeah, those were other ones that I just don't think if you wanted a copy of the textbook, you can have one, but they're, you know, like the stuff that is in the hardware certification exam on printers, I don't think that you get a lot from. Okay, I mean, really anymore, how do we print? We print to a USB printer or to a network printer, and how much hardware is there to work on and fix today? Very little. Okay, and it's not on how to fix the inside of a printer, anyways. It's on how to configure it to your PC and that kind of stuff. So, anyway, so let's go through these questions. Let's see. We're just going to go through all of them that anyone missed. Okay, so obviously all these can only be used once. We have 2 kinds of memory, the kind that needs to be refreshed and the kind that does not need to be refreshed. What kind of memory needs to be refreshed every few milliseconds? Which kind? What?
DRAM.
DRAM, right? That stands for dynamic RAM. Dynamic RAM is dynamic, meaning it changes all the time, meaning it has to be refreshed all the time. So it's refreshed continually with the memory controller as we look at the CO ratings, how often does it have to hit that memory to keep the information in there? And I'm sorry I didn't hit do not disturb. Yes?
Oh, you have presentations again?
Yeah. Why do you only call during my class when I'm presenting? It's an orange day.
I'm psychic.
Why?
I'm psychic.
What? See, I need to remember to hit that key when I'm doing it. And then, now I switch glasses. Now I got 2 different pairs of glasses up here. Grab the other. Okay, so conversely, if I'm going through something like the memory needs to be refreshed every few milliseconds, and then the memory that do not need to be continually refreshed. So I'm going to go down here to this one. So the opposite of that is
SRAM.
SRAM, okay, for static RAM. The type of memory used for laptops, okay, SODIMM, right? And DIMMs are used for desktops, SODIMMs are used for laptops. So right below it, memory used for desktops are DIMMs. And that was the topic of one of the questions, the essay questions that you guys have, making sure you understand the difference between DIMM and a SODIMM. Stands for column access strobe latency, CAS latency. And then conversely stands for row access strobe latency, RAS latency. These are typically the exact same number, but we just use CAS latency when we're looking at it because there's no reason to say, oh, that's 19, that's also 19. So for some reason somebody else picked that we look at the CL, not the RL. Retains its data when the PC is turned off. ROM, read-only memory, right? If we're talking about the BIOS settings, we're looking at the CMOS RAM that the CMOS battery holds. But if it's in read-only memory, then it stays there. Well, this was easy. Stands for random access memory, RAM. Current type and generation of RAM would be DDR. And why didn't I put DDR3 in there? I don't know. I don't know. That was an easy one. I'm not sure what people missed. If there was anything on there that you're like, I didn't understand that, please let me know so that it doesn't hit you later. Most of the class missed this one. Okay, so select all the true statements. Memory is primary storage.
True.
True, right? It's primary storage to
The CPU.
the CPU, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about primary or secondary storage. Adding memories allows you to install more programs. False, and that's what most people think of when they talk about memory. I can't get this program on my computer, I need to add more memory. And it's like, no, that's not what you add. You need to add secondary storage, not primary. Memory is secondary storage, but we just said it's primary, so that's not true. System RAM is dynamic and refreshes thousands of times a second. True or false?
True.
True. Okay, we just said that with the last question. And then adding memory usually increases program response time or speed. True. That's the whole point of adding memory. That doesn't have to go out to the disk cache. It stays in memory while it's running programs, which is why the computer feels faster. It increases program response time because the CPU has more play area. And if it runs out of play area, and that's one of the things we're going to talk more about in Chapter 7, is that the computer brain, it's supposed to be a brain, has its internal cache up here, right, in its head that it stores stuff in, and then it has the amount of RAM that it can talk to, and if it runs out of RAM, then way down here in slow diskville, the memory controller moves information back and forth. Well, the CPU only wants to look at this RAM. That's all it sees is when it's doing computation is this stuff up here. The motherboard fakes it out that it has more memory by swapping information out of RAM to the hard drive to a file called a swap file that it has on here. It swaps stuff, the motherboard swaps stuff back and forth, and this happens at hundreds, if not thousands of times, depending on your hard drive, slower than RAM. So does it increase the speed of your computer in gigahertz? No. Does it increase the effective speed of programs and stuff as you open them? Yes, because if we eliminate this swap file completely by having enough RAM in our computer, it never does this if we have enough RAM, and the computer and the programs run much faster. Okay, so we're trying to get rid of this, and that's why we want to find that sweet spot, which I said is price performance is 8 gig. If you got the money, 16 gig, because that 16 gig almost completely eliminates the use of the swap folder. If you're using humongous programs, maybe 32, and that's why we said the gamer PCs we're going to say are 32 gig of RAM. Past that, you're just throwing away your money. Does nothing. So, okay, so the last one is adding memory usually increases, and it says usually. Why does it say usually?
There's always an exception somewhere.
Yeah, well, if I'm increasing it from 32 to 64, it will make no difference. But if I'm increasing it from 4 to 8, it will definitely make a difference, without question. Okay, so that's why it says usually. So that's the correct answer of that particular question. Match all terms with the definitions. Adding more of this storage allows more programs to be installed or data to be stored.
Secondary storage.
Secondary storage, okay? Adding more of this storage often allows the system to perform faster.
Primary
storage. The type of RAM, CPU of cache. That's terrible English, Mr. Poole. The type of RAM in CPU cache. Okay, I got to rewrite that one, and that is static RAM. Type of RAM, system RAM is composed of is dynamic. I really need to fix that before I forget, because that's not good English. I don't know who wrote that. We'll say it wasn't me, even though we know it was. Okay, that's better English there. On our matching. Type of RAM. Type of RAM.
That uses
in CPU cache? Does that sound better? Or type of RAM CPU cache is composed of?
Yeah, we can work that.
Is composed of? Is that I'm looking for feedback.
I think so.
Does that make more Englishy sense? Type of RAM, system RAM is, yeah, it's the exact same thing. Why didn't I just look down there? Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense. That was bad English. I take off 2 points for myself. That's a self-assessment. Let's see if I can go back to where I was down there. Okay. Did I just do this one? This one? Fill in the blanks. Oh, most people got this right. Okay, this is mostly right. Memory is one of the upgrades that is often misunderstood. Adding more blank will add more primary storage for the CPU. Adding more system RAM. I could have put CPU cache. Could you add more CPU cache? You can add more CPU cache. But I took that out because I thought somebody's going to say that. And then I was like, but you could. Yeah, okay, if you were Bill Gates or something. I don't know. But will not allow more blank to be installed. Programs to be installed. People that do not understand what system RAM does will often confuse this. Usually when we talk about upgrading RAM, we are talking about blank RAM to the system. Adding RAM to the system. This can increase system performance. This and gosh, if you got this one right, you got like 12 other questions right on the test, right? You can just go refer back to this. This can increase system performance. This happens because when we have too little RAM, the information being held in RAM for the CPU is usually blanked to blank, swapped to secondary storage. Since blank is many times slower than blank, okay, secondary storage is many times slower than primary storage. This slows down the system while the CPU waits for data. If we get a message like low disk space, we would want to add more secondary storage, allowing more data or programs to be stored on our computer. This has absolutely nothing to do with system RAM. Okay. That anybody put anything else in there that they thought that made just as much sense?
For swapped, I put add.
It's frequent. This happens because we have too little RAM. The information being held in RAM for the CPU is frequently add to secondary storage. Nope, that's not proper English. I won't go with that one. Okay, so which one was that? Was that this one?
Fill in the blanks.
Fill in the blanks. So how much RAM do I need? This is straight out of the book. Okay, so this is out of our online book. RAM is something we need to make our system run well. Often people confuse the idea that faster RAM makes the system run faster when really more RAM has a more dramatic effect. There are limits to how much RAM can be useful. How much RAM can a 32-bit operating system normally utilize?
4 gig.
4 gig. Now, why does it say normally? There are tricks to the registry that you can do that let some parts of the 32-bit program see more. I've tried it, it doesn't work well, and I blue screened a lot. So I'm saying normally because if some system engineer came in here and I said only, they'll be like, okay, normally it can only see 4 gig RAM without a lot of trickery. Since that is the case, having more usually means we want to use a 64-bit operating system. The only real reason to stay with a 32-bit today is lack of RAM or incompatible drivers. In other words, none available, which is the case of our TV card that we have for the teachers. It only works with 32-bit operating systems, so some teachers really want that TV card to be able to play from their VHS over to here, which I have a VHS to DVD converter. I keep saying all you can do is give me the VHS tape, I'll make it a DVD, and then you don't need that anymore, but anyway. The sweet spot currently for RAM in a 64-bit system is 8 gig, okay? And that sweet spot is really defined as price for performance, okay? If you've got the money to buy 16 is better. But when we talk about, I'm trying to, justify how much RAM per dollar, 8 gig is the sweet spot, and that's why you guys all have 8 gig in your machines, okay? That is because we get better performance for our dollar, but that does not mean we can get more speed from any more RAM. It is recommended that you install blank of RAM for high performance gaming, multimedia editing, high definition graphics, blah, 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 blah. What's the answer to that one?
16.
16, okay. 16 is really the sweet spot for that. This is because these all use RAM, more RAM than traditional tasks. If you have funds and want to get top performance, then blank should more than do it. 32 gig. And past that, you're not going to see any difference. If you still have funds, it's better to look at blank RAM instead of blank RAM. Faster. If you've got that much money, you want to get that's when you want to spend more money to speed it up instead of adding more. So that, and really, I would say that's somewhere in this area. If I've got cash to get faster 16 gig RAM, I may want to do that, or I may want to put in 32. But that's right where we're like, which one am I going to get more of? But once I hit 32, absolutely not do you want to put 64 gig in over getting higher performance RAM. Okie dokie. Any questions on that one? Now that I've closed it. Everybody get that right. RAM is refreshed by the blank, which is part of the chipset on the motherboard.
Memory controller.
Memory controller. Okay, memory controller refreshes. One person got that right. Everybody got right. To upgrade memory in a PC generally means you're going to add more blank to the computer. RAM. Okay, RAM.
Yeah, Mr. Cool.
One person said speed. I gave you half credit for that, but that's yes, you're going to try to make it faster, but you're not adding speed. You can't really add speed. What?
I've yet to take the reattack.
Okay, that has nothing to do with that.
So I didn't know, should I be in here?
No, that's fine. Okay. Some current memory modules support. Okay, EDO RAM is really old, SIMs are really old, RIMs are really old. The only answer here is ECC. Okay, these are all really old types of RAM that existed when I was, this one especially, SIMs and EDO RAM. That was back when I first started doing computers, like in 1990. I mean, that's really old RAM. Did we just do this one? No, yeah. I just did that one. Okay. 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 50%, no! This is just the, okay, memory modules and the banks that hold them. By the way, that's the answer to another question that some people got wrong. It's called a memory bank. Usually have contacts made of gold. Gold, all contact. There was a point where they used to use nickel contacts on old RAM. In fact, some of my RAM, the EDO RAM that I've got on the shelf over there has nickel contacts, but none of the other ones were ever used. 100%. How did anybody get this one wrong? DRAM does not need constant refreshing. False. That's the definition of what it does need. It needs constant refreshing. False. By the way, for like a year, probably longer than that, we got only PCs from the military with all the RAM pulled out. And I called up and it's like, why is all the RAM gone from all the PCs? And they're like, well, because they could be classified and have classified material on them, and we don't want any information stored in the RAM to get to the end users. And I said, there is no information stored in the RAM on a system. It's refreshed thousands of times a second, and there's absolutely no way to get information off of a stick of RAM. To which I was told, well, sir, you just don't understand how RAM works. And I'm getting told this by a DRMO person. I'm like, really? Anyway, I was very frustrated. I wrote a letter on that, and I don't know if that's why we started doing RAM again, but I was like, I got a whole thing in this letter on understanding system RAM. That I was like, you don't. Okay, 100%. One person missed this one. Memory technologies change like other computer technologies do. The original synchronous DRAM, RAM bus, and DDR have become outdated. It wouldn't be smart to purchase a computer motherboard that uses any of these types of modules. That is true, right? Now, DDR4 is SDRAM, but I didn't say DDR4. The original synchronous DRAM, SDRAM. RAM bus and DDR have all become outdated. Obviously, DDR4 is not. So that somebody maybe had thought that on there. In DDR4 RAM, the time to access state is generated and listed as this. Okay, it's usually listed as. In fact, I don't think any of you ever found it listed in nanoseconds, which it used to be listed in. Now it just says the CL, Castle latency, or clock cycles. And nanoserts is a made-up word by me. It used to say nanozergs because, you know, Emperor Zerg. Okay, already did 100%. I am buying a motherboard. Somebody didn't get this one right. I'm buying an Asus ROG Maximus 9 Hero Z270 motherboard for my son and want to get memory for it. I'm looking at this memory. Okay, so first of all, we've got to Google this before we know anything. So I go ahead and put that in Google and go to the specs and come down here to the specifications. Where's that? Oh, right there. So now I'm on the specifications. I'm looking at this memory board. Is this a good choice? True means it will work. False, it means it will not. So I'm not asking fast or slow. I just want to know if this memory will work. This one takes DDR4 4133 down to
2133.
2130. It still says overclock. That doesn't make any sense. There has to be some speed that's not overclocked.
That's probably it. They messed it up. I do not know.
Anyway, what is this one? This is
DDR.
This is DDR2. How did anybody miss this one? I don't even understand that. So everyone should have said false. I'm trying to put DDR2 in a DDR4 motherboard. Why is this jumping like that? Okay, so I just did that one. Trying to get to this one, right? Is this the one?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So did anybody miss that one? Yes, one person. Match the following. You can use each only once. Amount of RAM for a good gamer PC. 16 gig. Minimum Windows 10, according to Mr. Poole. 2 gig. Minimum Windows 10, according to Microsoft. By the way, that's bunk. I have never had a Windows 10 system with 1 gig last more than 10 minutes before it says it's out of memory. And I literally mean, it's like, you can install it, you can start it, just don't open anything like Chrome. I guess you could open Internet Explorer maybe. The sweet spot, best performance for cost, 8 gig. Maximum RAM of 32-bit system can see is 4. Okay. Okay, so somebody got one of those wrong. Make sure you know those because we'll need those later. Match the amount of RAM. That's what I just did. Isn't that the one I just did?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we got this Pro memory. 2 people got this one wrong. I am upgrading a friend's PC. He has a PX DD Pro motherboard. Okay, so we need to copy that and throw that in Google. Man, I got a pinched nerve or something. It's making my left hand fall asleep. I want to put the most memory I can in it. Which would get me there? Okay, so the most memory I can in this motherboard.
Yeah, it has 4 slots.
Okay, it's got 4 DIMMs, max of 16 gig, so I can only put how much per slot? 4. Okay, and I remember what it was. So somebody bid off on 2 8 gig sticks, and that is not true. You can't get 2 8 gig sticks. It has to be 4 gig sticks of DDR4 non-ECC. So that's the correct answer with that one. Let's see, Phil was correct. I should be doing that to make sure it goes. Okay, match the amount of RAM. Just did that one 100%. Which is faster? Which RAM is faster? Which one's faster?
RAM.
Static RAM is the fastest kind of RAM, right? If it wasn't so expensive, all RAM would be static RAM. Everybody got it right. Everybody got it right. L1, L2, L3 cache. Cache on the core per core L1. Furthest from the core L3. Off the core can be shared or individual. One person must have gotten one thing wrong on that one. Synchronous dynamic RAM. Synchronous dynamic random access RAM in SDRAM is not used in current systems. That's untrue. DDR3 and DDR4 is forms of SDRAM. This is a true statement because DDR3 and DDR4 is not a form of SDRAM. It is a form of SDRAM. Wow, this one's terrible. What happened on this one? Let's see what this question was. 28%. Synchronous dynamic random access memory is called synchronous. Ah, we should have all got this right because it synchronizes with the
CPU.
motherboard. Memory cannot synchronize with the CPU. Why can't it synchronize with the CPU? That's the whole, remember the bottleneck conversation we had? The memory bottleneck is because memory goes at one speed and CPUs go at the other. So I've got a CPU, for instance, on my computer, goes at 4.2 gigahertz, and the memory goes at 2100 megahertz, which is equal to 2.1 gigahertz. And the bottleneck is that it can't get back and forth. It's going half the speed of the CPU. And the reason motherboards have specific memory types is that they can take is because the motherboard has to synchronize with the RAM. It has nothing to do with the CPU. And if it's not on that list, it means it can't synchronize it. Physically, when I look at I'm not going to pull one up, but when I look at a DDR4 motherboard, physically it'll fit. If I buy DDR4 4100, it's going to snap in to any motherboard that takes DDR4. But if it's not on the list, it means the motherboard itself will not be able to synchronize with that RAM, and therefore it will never start at all. Okay? So synchronous RAM synchronizes with the motherboard. Any questions on that? Yes?
So how does that work with overclocking?
That's what it's doing when you overclock. Oh. You're telling the motherboard to go faster. You're not overclocking the RAM. The RAM is 4100. Yeah, say about 4100. You're buying 4100 RAM, and then you're telling the motherboard, just like if you modified your car and put what am I trying to think of? A kit in it that puts that
turbo?
liquid in. What?
Like turbo?
Yeah, you modify your engine to make it run faster than it did when it came from Ford, right? Now, what could happen? I could blow up my engine. My brother did that to one of my cars once. He tried to make a Volkswagen Bug, tried to soup it up and run it way faster than it was meant to run, and the engine blew up. Literally blew up. So what happens when we overclock motherboards? We're telling the motherboard to go way faster than you were rated for so that you can synchronize with the RAM, and that's why sometimes we get blue screens. It's not the RAM's fault. The RAM is its speed. Now, some RAMs we've seen have the ability to change their speed to match the motherboard. Okay? But the speed is set by the motherboard. And if the RAM can do it, great. And if the RAM can't do it, no fly. And if we go do a faster one and the motherboard can overclock, that's why the motherboard lists all those speeds, because it's saying, I can overclock up to this, and I can overclock up to this, but my best speed not overclocked is right here. It's these two sticks or whatever. So, does that make sense? Okay. So, but like I said, some of the RAMs you guys showed had a list of speeds it could do. It did this speed natively, but it could go down to this speed, and that's because it's trying to match the motherboard speed.
So how does that work, like on the like what are you doing that is allowing it to go up to that speed?
You are going in the motherboard. Well, it depends on the motherboard. BIOS. That's something you do in BIOS. Okay. So you go into BIOS, and it's not easy. First of all, it's not like turn it on. There's a little switch. Okay. But I shouldn't say that. The last one I got, this one, had a quick overclock setting that you just set it to enable overclocking, and it's supposed to, and I obviously didn't try it, it's supposed to, during the BIOS setup, it goes to the RAM and says, how fast can you go? And then it goes, you can go 4100, let's everybody, we're going 4100! And then it tries to change all the speeds because it changes wattages, all kinds of stuff are settings on the BIOS setting to make it overclock. And when I've overclocked before, because I have done it on, I don't know if I have that still motherboard in here, a system that I tried to ramp up for my son. So I tried to overclock it, and that was specifically actually overclocking the CPU, but it's the same kind of basic setup. I have to go into BIOS, and I have to set certain voltages and frequencies that then, if everything works right, the system doesn't blue screen. And his actually worked fine. I overclocked it from a 2.4 gigahertz processor to a 3.2 gigahertz processor. The problem was, whenever we had a power outage, it went back to 2.4. And I'm like, that's a pain in my butt. It was just too much work to read, so I just left it at 2.4. I didn't even tell him. He's like, why is my computer running slower? I don't know. But anyway, it's all BIOS settings. So your motherboard has to support it. And the newer BIOSes are way easier to overclock than the old BIOSes. And this is the one that I was doing from 2.4 to 3.2 is a really old BIOS. You had to go into all kinds of settings. And if you ever want to, I guarantee you can Google it and look for a YouTube video, which is how I overclocked that one. Look for a YouTube video, and the guy's like, set this setting, and I'm sitting there with the computer over here and my laptop over here going, whatever he says, I'll try it, and see what happens. It worked. So, does everything everybody's saying on YouTube work? Absolutely not, but, some things do. So, what could go wrong? Anyway, so that's the process. You have to make BIOS changes, and it has to support it. Most of the BIOSes you guys have played with, have no overclocking capability. There's nothing in there that you can overclock on that laptop to make it change that processor faster. And in general, laptops do not have BIOSes that overclock. Why is that?
Heating issue?
Yeah. It's a heating issue. There's no way to add more cooling to a laptop, right? Short of, okay, every time Camerson uses his laptop, he's going to sit in the deep freeze. He's going to go sit in there, I'm going way faster now, You just can't cool that down more if you ramp up the CPU or the memory. There's no way. In fact, laptop memory, none of it has a heatsink. So there's no way to get it any cooler at all, which is, by the way, why if you're using a laptop on your lap, it gets really hot. The memory is right there. And it's got, look at all that cooling you've got. You've got those little slats in the bottom. That's it, right? And your CPU is right under there. But yes, we got a huge fan section, right, that can blow it out. So, if you don't ever want to have kids, you leave it sitting right there while you're working on your laptop all the time. They make CPU coolers that you can lay on your lap. I used to have one of those. It was like this thin. It had plugged into the USB and it blew fans and it kept my lap cool and stuff. But boy, your laptop battery just. You got a couple extra fans blowing air around. But anyway, so that's why laptops don't have them, and PCs sometimes do. Most of these kind of PCs, if you buy a Dell pre-made, absolutely not. There's no overclocking settings on this one. If you buy a Dell Alienware PC, absolutely you would expect to see overclocking settings on that motherboard, and if you don't, Alienware has totally lost its focus. Alienware was an awesome gamer rig making PC company that Dell bought out, and so Dell now makes Alienware PCs. Hopefully they still make them to the same quality that Alienware did. Off topic. Okay, let's see. I'm buying a motherboard. 2 people got this one wrong. Let's see what we got. Purchased a Gigabyte Aorus GAZ220 Gaming 7 motherboard for my son. Copy and want to get memory for it. I'm afraid of overclocking and want to get the fastest RAM I can without overclocking the board. I am considering this RAM from Newegg. Okay, so first of all, what does that mean? Let's go see what overclocking means. And every time you do this, you don't want to go to Newegg. You want to go to the manufacturer's site when we're looking up these kind of specs. Oh my gosh, what's going on here? Yeah. I'm like on the phone site or something. Maybe it's because it was smaller and it did some funkiness to me. Okay, specifications. Here's our memory specifications right there. So I just said I didn't want to overclock, so 2400 would be my fastest non-overclocking. I am considering, is this what I'm looking for? And I want to get memory, I'm afraid of overclocking. I want to get the fastest memory I can without overclocking the board. So the fastest memory I can with overclocking is DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM. So let's see, is this DDR4 2400 megahertz? DDR4 2400 megahertz desktop memory model. So looks good for me so far. So I'm going to say true. It should be true. Yeah, it's true. Okay. 2 people said false. Any reason? Or are you just going, I'm out of time? False. No? Nope. Nobody got any inputs on that one? 100%. 1 person wrong. And most of these you can see, other than that one, that 25% got right. Okay. So I need to upgrade my staff member's laptop memory. It takes PC4 1700. Is that SODIMM? Okay, so PC4 every single time I've asked a question, I've been asking DDR4 whatever. But PC4 1700 has a direct correlation to one of the DDR4s. So if I wanted to, I could just do this, put that in there, and say Newegg. Now, and I wanted to say SODIMM, didn't I? SODIMM to make my search easier. So I can see right now, and I'm going to open it up, it means that PC4 1700 means it's DDR4 2133. Okay, so those two numbers go together. So I'm looking for DDR4 2133. What is the speed of DDR4 2133?
2,133 megahertz.
Megahertz, right? A number means nothing without a, is it gigahertz, terahertz, hertz? I don't know. So if you just put 2133, you lost at least a half a point on that question, okay? So let me go back here to the question. His laptop is dual channel, so I need 2 4-gig sticks for the best performance I can give him. Please find some RAM in the area below. Give me the RAM maker, RAM price, CL, speed, you had to say megahertz, generation. The correct answer would be 4th generation. Okay, DDR4 is just giving me numbers that I don't know if you know what that means, right? It's 4th generation was the right name, and a URL link. So this one's not the right one. I don't want this. I want laptop memory, and I'm going to say 4 gig per module, and I'm going to say DDR4 2133, and I'm going to say, do I have SODIMM down here anywhere? Do I have any choice down there? Okay, well, apply. Oh wait, I'm in laptop memory, so I'm only gonna get that. And I went, I got 2 by 4. There we go. Now I only got those. And do I still have 2133? Yeah. So everything here is 2133, and I'm gonna say lowest price. So if I want to get the best deal, did I say new? Is there a new versus? I hate when they give me used crap. So I could buy that Mushkin Enhanced Essentials blah 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 laptop for 49 bucks. I could get it for 49 bucks. I think most of you guys gave me this one actually. I remember seeing that picture when I clicked on the link. But the question specifically was, I want to get the best performance. So if you went and picked another one and said, I went through the CO ratings and this one was the best performance, I'm just looking for 2 by 4 that are DDR4 2133 SODIMM modules. So that's what some people got a little bit wrong on theirs. I'm going to skip the other. Do you need me to go through the other one? It's the exact same as that one. Except for it's a PCU versus a, oh, no, it's not exactly the same. Because I wanted one more thing answered on this question. Why would you recommend this choice? And what I was getting at there on that question is, Cameron may give me a one that's overclocked, and Daytona may give me one that's not overclocked, and I want you to tell me why. I want to get the fastest performance for my PC, and I'm not afraid of overclocking, or I don't want to get blue screens, so I don't want to overclock. So that was the, why would you recommend this? I was looking for that. Why would you pick not overclocked, overclocked? Okay, so some people just said, it works. Okay, yeah, well, we're hoping you give me one that works. Okay, I was looking for a little bit more than it works. Which RAM is faster? Oh, okay, static RAM is faster. I am buying a motherboard. Last question, let's see. Let's see if I can click on there. I am purchasing a motherboard. I said I want to get the fastest non-OC memory for it. Let's see, the MSI. I think this is actually an old one, isn't it? Can't remember. Specifications. So this one, memory, takes DDR, no, it's still DDR4. Okay, so the fastest non-overclocked is 2400. I'm going to DDR4 3200. The fastest non-overclocked, so select one false. Okay, that was the answer to that. Okay, so anybody have any questions on that section? Okay, I know a couple people have already looked at redoing the test because they're unhappy with their test, and that's great. That's why I build those things in there so that you guys can do the intervention activities and do the retest. The end of the quarter is 2 weeks?
Yeah.
2 weeks, so obviously you have that long to get it done. Okay. We will not have the Chapter 7 test before then, although we may have the Chapter 7 presentations before then. Okay, so you guys have watched the videos on this, hopefully, so you should be able to identify the difference between a PATA IDE drive and what that looks like. I will tell you that these are in the factor of 3 times slower than the current SATA drives, and you would be hard pressed to find one. In fact, I can't even find a PATA SSD, but I wanted you to know what the difference is. So the original ATA, which is parallel ATA, which now SATA is serial ATA, that's the kind of drive every single computer was when I came in here. They used an IDE interface, and it looks like this. It's a big ribbon cable. It's a 40-pin ribbon cable that attaches. I don't even know why I still have a box of the ribbon cables, because I don't have a single computer in the district that uses them. But I do, so I'll pull one out for you. Let's see if I can get it. Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is an original PATA cable, also called an IDE cable. In fact, everyone used to call this an IDE cable until SATA came out. And then it's like, oh, well then it's PATA, because we're calling the other one SATA. So anyway, but it used to be always called an IDE interface. The IDE interface has one plug that goes one way. You can't go the wrong way. If you do, there's a little block out in the bottom where one pin is missing, and you will destroy the motherboard if you put it in the wrong way. There's also a little notch that's supposed to help you keep from putting it in the wrong way. It doesn't stop people from trying, okay? And in general, the blue end of the cable was the side that went in the motherboard. And then you could have up to 2 devices plugged into it. So the max of all computers when I first came into computing was either 2 devices or 4, depending on how many of these they had. There was never one with 3. They only had 2 IDE cable interfaces max on a motherboard. So that's the maximum that you could get on a computer. And when you plug these into a computer, there was also a whole rigmarole of, when I plug this in here and I set this up, I also, these, because they run on the same cable, could get confused. I guess that's the best way to say it. So you had to say what one of these plugs, and it could be either one, is the master device and which one's the slave device, meaning I have priority and you lose. If we're both talking at the same time, shut up! I'm the boss, okay? And it was called the master-slave relationship, and I had to set little pins on the back to say which one was master and which one's a slave, okay? And this used to be something you'd get on your final exam. I'd mess up the pins, and you get a computer that the hard drive won't work. Well, if they're both set as master, hard drive don't work. If they're both set as slave, hard drive not work, so you won't get that. But I want you to understand what a PATA drive is. These, the speeds on these, the fastest they got to, they started out at 66, they ended up at 133. And when SATA came out, it started at 150, right? So as soon as SATA came out, it was faster than the fastest one of these, and then it went 150, then 300, and now 600 megabits per second. Okay, so the new ones are just so much faster than this. There's no reason for these to exist anymore. But this is what a PATA drive looks like. It has a little pin thing. The power supply is all used to be this Molex 4-pin power supply like this. And now SATA drives all have what's called a SATA power connector. Okay, it is off the same pin. It's the same wattage. Everything is the same except for the in connector. I don't know. So you actually could have SATA drive with either one of or both of the power connectors on the back. So that's SATA or PATA. I can invite a SATA drive. Who's saying no on these? Okay, so SATA drive just has the SATA connector on the back.
Probably Maverick, but he's not here.
I've yet to finish it, so I haven't retaken it.
I'm trying to find a. I don't remember to put this back in the bad drives box. So the SATA connector, do I have a cable out? SATA cables are easy because you can only hook one thing up to each. Where's my SATA cables at? You can't pretty much get them wrong. It's really difficult to get SATA cables connected wrong because they're L-shaped. So when you look at a SATA, we'll pass this around. But you guys have plugged these in before. But It's L-shaped, so you just have to look at where the L is and plug in the L, and it's just one connection to the motherboard. On the motherboard, though, it's going to say what's SATA 0, what's 1, what's 2, what's 3, what's 4, and it, by default, is going to say SATA 0, I start first. Is it got the operating system? Nope, I'll try SATA 1 now. Nope, I'll try SATA 2 now. So you generally want to plug these in the right order on your motherboard. You can change that order in BIOS, but if your BIOS battery goes out, it goes back to the other order, and then all of a sudden your computer doesn't boot anymore. Here, you can pass that around and plug it in and unplug it to your heart's content. So that's how you identify a SATA drive. It's the same connections on the back of an SSD as it is on the back of a full drive, yeah.
Can you put the Windows or your operating system on a PCIe drive or an M.2 drive?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Those are your rights.
Right? So if I get a computer with an M.2 drive, I'm gonna put it on there.
No doubt.
I say that I didn't do that on my one at home because I had a 250 gig drive and I had a 2 terabyte solid state. And I didn't want to have it split up. But if you have a decent sized M.2 drive, like Moodle does, Moodle's got a 2 terabyte M.2 drive. So the operating system's on that M.2 drive, and so is Moodle. Okay, so the M.2 drive then is that much faster than a SATA cable, because that goes at 600, and then M.2s go 3100, 3200 range, right? So an M.2 is 6 times faster than the fastest SATA, or more than the fastest SATA, and then SATA is 5 times faster than a PATA. So I mean, you see it; it's much faster. And I don't think I have M.2 in the ICANNs, which I should. I should change my ICANN. So that's how you identify a SATA drive. I don't need you to explain that. I'm going to take that off the ICANNs. I need to take that off there. So I'm not really adding questions. I'm taking those questions off the Chapter 7 because we've gotten to the point where IDs, right? It's too old that you will never see it. And if you do see it at home, for goodness sake, get a new drive. Okay. Okay, so RAID is new. Have we gotten to the RAID reading yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so RAID is, in fact, I'm kind of just reviewing some of the stuff. You have more videos and stuff probably. Has everybody gotten through everything? I should have looked at that, where we're at on the reading. So on the, let me switch my view to clean view. That's why I made that view. So it looks good. Okay, so hopefully everyone got through. We've done day 1 and day 2, right?
Yeah.
Just day 1. Okay, so you guys have all got day 1 done. So I'm going to unleash you here in almost a little bit to work a little bit on day 2, and then we'll finish day 2. Day 2 and the pre-project skirmish next class is what we've done. So okay, so you guys haven't done the solid state videos and the SSD reading yet. So I probably should stop right there because we haven't even got to that part of it yet, and let you guys have time to get through the rest of that. But I'll finish what I was going to say on RAID. RAID is a way to connect up more than one drive in a way to either protect your data or speed up your computer. Okay. Now, solid states we know go way faster than traditional drives. Okay, although the connection is the same, my connection on physically, my SATA connection may be the same SATA connection between this solid state drive, and it is between this solid state drive here and that traditional drive you're passing around. The connection is the same, which means the data is transferred from here to the motherboard at the same maximum rate, but it can't find the data on that fast enough to ever hit that fastest rate. Just can't. Okay, a traditional drive isn't fast enough, and we'll see that when we look at do our projects. We're going to look at the read-write speed on this, or the data access speed. How long does it take to find the data in order to send it to the cable, versus how long does it take to find the data on a traditional drive before it sends it to the cable. The cable is not the limiting factor. It's the internal components on here. But what RAID lets you do is it lets you set up, and you'll read about the difference between 0, 1, 5, and 10. It lets you set up your drives in a variety of different ways so that in some cases you're just mirroring it to protect your data. In some case you're spreading it across the drives so that because the traditional drive is so slow to write to, it takes turn and it's writing to both at the same time. So RAID lets you do multiple different things. But I'm not going to go any further on RAID because you haven't read it, and it's kind of silly for me to go into it until we've gotten to that point. Yeah.
There was a thing on there that said redundancy is not the same as like backing up your files and stuff like that. Is that
right? So okay. So I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to stop the video recording right now before I slam anyone. So I'm going to stop this because I'm going to say it. How do I stop? Alt 0.